So this is Stephen Chen for nighthacking.com. I am doing interviews with folks who are JavaOne speakers today and also next week. JavaOne San Francisco is from September 22nd through September 26th. And I have on the line with me Trisha Gee, who normally is in London. That's where I've seen her on the last few visits, but now is in Spain. What are you doing on the main European continent there?
I'm mostly enjoying the sun. It turned out that so I've been at MongoDB since October, and most of the time I was working from home anyway because most of the JVM guys are scattered all over the place, largely North America. So it doesn't really make any difference whether I'm in London where it rains or whether I'm in Seville in Spain where it's nice and sunny and the food is excellent.
Oh, awesome! So you're enjoying the cuisine. What's your favorite Spanish cuisine or dish?
All of it. Anything involving cheese or jamon or breakfast. It's all awesome.
Very nice, very nice. So, what city in Spain are you in? That's a question from Jim Weaver, who's on the chat right now.
I'm in Seville.
Oh wait, did you already say that? And then I asked you the same question.
Yeah, I mentioned
again?
it. No, I mentioned it. It's in the south of Spain, so so as British people, we tend to go to Spain because it's close and it's warm. And I really had no idea that Seville is even warmer than the rest of Spain. It's practically North Africa.
Wow.
It's amazing.
Wow, that's very different climate than London, which is usually a little cold and dreary, sometimes raining.
Yeah, it can be nice in summer, but it's a bit hit and miss. And if you're unlucky, like last year, all the sunny days were during the week and not during the weekend. But here, been here for about a month, and last night was the first time I've seen rain, and this week is the first time I've seen clouds.
Wow.
And it's been around about 40 degrees, which is about 100, I think. It's kind of crazy.
All right, and you're still able to work on all your MongoDB work while you're there as well. So what sort of stuff are you doing right now for?
So we're writing the new Java driver at the moment. We've been writing it for a little while, and I kind of naively thought that a driver which is a couple of hundred classes should be quite easy to rewrite between two of us. But it turns out that it's not really the case. A, because every time I swan off to a conference, I'm not doing any code. And B, because if you want to get it right, you can't just rewrite things the way you want. You have to test it properly, and
Yeah,
all the
and
new
if
features.
you're doing APIs for other people to use, you probably have to put even more thought into it.
Yeah,
Because you
exactly.
want to make it really
So
easy to use.
we sort of have a problem, but an opportunity as well, which is that we don't really like some of the stuff with the public API, and we can't change a lot of it because it's used by lots of people and it's open source, so we don't even know exactly who's using it. And we also know large organizations are using it, and they're not necessarily going to jump to the new version just because we say, oh, we're not supporting that anymore, you're going to have to move to the new version. So one of the challenges we've got is trying to re-architect the whole driver whilst providing a backwards compatible API. But also we want to provide a new API which is more fluent and it's more modern. For example, we've got generics in this one, which is quite nice.
Cool. So how does that relate to the stuff you're going to be chatting about at the JavaOne conference? Are you going to be talking about some of the stuff you're doing on the MongoDB APIs?
Yeah, definitely. I wanted to, obviously my job is to talk about MongoDB, but I don't want to just go to JavaOne and say to people, this is MongoDB and this is why you should be using it, because I think some people are already using it because they see it's valuable, and some people haven't had a chance to move to it yet because maybe their organization isn't ready to switch, or maybe it's just not the right product for what they want. So it's kind of pointless, I think, to go to JavaOne and tell everyone MongoDB is amazing because of this. What I wanted to do was, which is I could do if you want, but what I wanted to do is talk about the experience we had designing the new Java driver, and which I think is more applicable to all developers. So I wanted to talk about some of the design goals we had, some of the hurdles we faced, some of the things maybe that I might do differently looking back. Hindsight's 2020.
Yep.
And hopefully just kind of explore some of that with other developers, and I don't know if they might learn a little bit about MongoDB, but hopefully they'll have a bit more in their head about how to do design incrementally as a developer.
Okay, so we don't have a lot of time. This is a pretty short interview, but are there any examples maybe in the code or stuff you're working on for your current stuff where you could show us kind of what sort of problems or things you're thinking about when you're doing the design?
So I can definitely do that. I'm going to attempt to draw on the whiteboard, which I'm not sure if you're going to be able to see. But we just put the whiteboard up last week, so this week actually. So I'm keen to use it.
Yeah, no, give it a try.
Now I have to go and find a pen. And I'm tethered to the computer by this thing.
Which also happens to be your camera.
Yeah, exactly. And this could be disastrous. No, I'm not going to pull that anyway. Whiteboard. Hold on. I'm going to take this off so you can't talk to me. Can you see that at all?
Yep. So it core and then a couple fluent and classic boxes on top of it.
Yeah.
Oh, and then we have MongoDB in the picture as well. Very nice.
Yeah. So the driver, we've basically introduced an architecture into the driver. It's very naive to assume that, not naive, it's logical to assume that what a driver does is just take Java objects, serialize them into Mongo-shaped objects, and then turn them back into Java objects. And that's kind of how a lot of us have thought when we're writing the Java driver. In actual fact, it's got an architecture in its own right, and it's got this sort of core piece which does things like handle connections to the different servers, because you can have a sharded environment, you can have a replica set, you can read from secondaries, and you have to write to primaries. So there's a certain amount of connection handling as well as connection pooling, and all of that sort of thing is a sort of shared core architecture. And on top of that, as a very thin wrapper, actually, is the API that the developers are going to interact with. So if I'm a Java developer and I'm working with the Java driver, I'm going to say things like db.insert and whatever. And that's all going to be on what I've called the classic API.
Mm-hmm.
With the redesign, we have the option to have a more fluent API, which is more kind of with builders and immutable objects, and some people accused it of looking a bit more functional. And it's a slightly different way of working, but I think that's going to give us a bit more flexibility. But the classic API is required to keep the backwards compatibility, and the fluent API is a good way to introduce stuff that perhaps might not fit in so nicely with the old API. One of the advantages of this is that we can, as well as providing backwards compatibility and providing a new shiny API, which is hopefully going to be better and shinier, it also provides a sort of a public API which isn't really a public API. So the core API, the core functionality has an API as well, which things like the Scala driver could connect to, and things like other libraries that use MongoDB, like Spring Data and ODMs like Morphia, they can connect in at the lower level without having to translate everything into something that goes through the public API, which then gets translated into something at the lower level. So they can sort of interact with the driver at the level which makes sense. So it becomes more of a JVM driver with a Java API over the front of it, but hopefully the JVM core is reusable by whoever wants to reuse it.
Okay, so the two boxes in the picture which are new is probably you're extracting out a bunch of the stuff and building the core reusable framework and then building your new Fluent API on top of it.
Yeah. And we've done quite a lot as well to improve the way the connection handling stuff is done, because before it was kind of tangled with the meat of the driver, and now we've sort of embraced the fact that it's a component in its own right. It makes it a lot easier to design and develop. And
I popped your desktop up on screen, but
okay.
What we won't be able to show a lot of the code, but just describe what you're doing in general.
Sure. So I've got a really, well, what I hope is quite a nice small example of how we can reuse functionality between the two different areas, and hopefully also reuse it between other drivers if they want. And hopefully you can see I've got a drop method here in collection administration impl. This drop method, oh, my computer's now freaking out. This is the method that a user is going to call if they want to drop a collection.
Hmm.
Shouldn't be a massive surprise there. And at the moment, this is duplicated between the new shiny public API and the old one, which I now can't find, in DB collection. And I'm sure in 25 seconds that will pop up on the screen as well. And that's that's basically copied and pasted between the two different things. And we're trying to move away from that sort of thing. And if I switch tabs now, maybe it'll catch up with me in time. There is, in the new world order, we have this concept of operations. So we've introduced this idea of a drop collection operation, which you create and call from wherever you want to do drop collection. So in the case which is on my screen right now and probably isn't on your screen yet.
Yeah, I think we
Is it
got the
there?
drop collection there now.
Cool. So we've got drop collection operation in the new API, the collection admin, and then you just pass in some of the stuff that it needs. And then also in DB collection, hold on, that's kind of weird. You have another drop collection operation. So, and then all the code that was copied and pasted between both levels is now encapsulated in this drop collection operation. So we
Very
can do
nice.
all the important stuff, like, and we can get everything that we need, and we can do things like figure out what to do with exceptions and figure out how to turn stuff into the correct objects.
How well
And we
tested was the original code that you're refactoring?
it had tests. So we've got one called DB collection old test. Oh, what have I done there? That's not what I wanted. DB collection old. These, when it pops up on the screen, this is the old unit test for collection. So we've got some tests there. But actually, this leads me nicely to the other thing I wanted to talk about, which is we're trying to move towards Spock as a unit testing framework, and I'm really, really loving it. So if we look at the new tests for the old code, I've got one here called DB collection functional specification, and here we can use Spock to do, I love this, the fact that it can just do given, when, then as part of the Spock framework. And it's just simplified our code quite a lot.
Yeah, so for folks who don't know what Spock is, it's a test framework using BDD principles written, or behavior-driven development principles written in Groovy.
It's really,
but
really
you can use
cool.
it to
So-
test Java code or any other language, which is great.
Exactly. So we've also got these acceptance tests. So I've kind of introduced acceptance tests. We had a lot of different concepts in our test before. We had unit tests and functional tests, and they tested at different levels, but it wasn't really clear. So now we've separated those out. We have acceptance tests, functional tests, and unit tests.
Nice.
What I want to do with the acceptance tests, although I might change my mind on this, is that they're going to be Java tests, because that's going to tell Java programmers how to interact with the public API. So this is the drop collection test for the new API. So you can see do collection.tools.drop. And then we have things like the functional test can be written in Groovy. So that was one of the ones I was showing you here. Oh, so hang on. So on the acceptance tests, I don't have an example here, but I was largely doing things like writing comments right at the top, where I'd have like given, and then in the middle I would say when, and then at the end I would say then in comments, just to make it really clear what we were trying to do. But in the functional tests, you don't have to do that, because you tell Groovy, this is the given, this is the when, and this is the then. And you have to do that to tell Groovy that it's a test, and it's really, really awesome.
Nice.
It's also really nice for MongoDB, because MongoDB is a document database. Everything's kind of hash maps, and in Java, hash maps are a little bit clumsy to create, and you have to sort of create a new hash map, and you have to put this and set this. And in Groovy, you get this kind of nice syntax where you can just give the name value pairs, and it's much more readable as a document.
Cool. All right. So switching topics slightly. Thanks for giving us a quick deep dive on what you're doing for the APIs and the test framework. This is a question from Jim on the stream. He was wondering, the blog subtitle on your personal blog is "My Goal Only to Change the World," and also "How to Change the World" was the title of your 2012 presentation. So what's the deep meaning here? What's your grand vision for a better world?
I think my thing here is that we as developers kind of get led by society to think that we're just geeks who sit behind a computer and all we do is input noughts and ones into the computer, and we just commune with the machines.
Nuts. That would be British for zero, right?
Yes.
Okay.
And oh yeah, zeros. And we kind of buy into this idea, and the media loves this idea of us being little geeks caught up in a room just basically talking to a computer. Now, in the old days, when a computer was a box on your desk and it didn't go anywhere, then you were a sort of isolated, antisocial sort of person, maybe. But that's not what we do these days. What we do has an impact on everyone. You look at things like Facebook, and having created Facebook, it's totally changed the way that people talk to each other. We're in touch with people, maybe we don't want to be, but we're in touch with people we didn't used to be. We can get a window on other people's lives, and we can catch up with people that previously maybe you lost their phone number and then you never see them ever again. And things like, I used to work at ThoughtWorks a little while back, and they developed an application where families in countries, kids in refugee camps and things, can use mobile apps to be reunited with their families. And this is a really powerful thing that we as developers can do. I mean, that's like a really big, good, ethical thing to do, get lost kids back to their families. But even things which are arguably just kind of fun for us, like Facebook, it totally impacts everyone, and it changes the way that we interact as people. And I think that as developers, I think we ought to be thinking about this more. Instead of letting people put us in this box of, well, you're just a geek, let us start thinking about the fact that we change the world with every 1 and 0 we write, even if it's just in, I say just, but even if it's in a big enterprise. These big enterprises, they have massive impacts on our lives. These banks, you could lose people millions of money. And I think we need to think more in terms of the impact that we have. I think it's a great and exciting thing, not quite a scary thing that maybe I've made it out to be.
Oh, yeah. No, I think a lot of people in their day jobs don't really think about the ramifications of all their stuff they're working on, because they're not always the end consumer of the applications. But you're right. I mean, there's just such a huge impact that we as technology workers have in our day jobs. And, if you put more thought into that, you might look at your job differently.
I think so, and I think that we love our jobs, a lot of us, and I think that we shouldn't be ashamed of it when we tell people, oh, I'm a developer. I think we should be excited about that. So, I wrote that application on your phone which lets you do this thing, or I wrote your online banking application, or I do something behind the scenes for your grocery store. I think it's exciting, and I think that this kind of comes back into my other pet peeve about, getting more diverse people into IT. I think if we were more externally excited about what we do, I think we would
get other people more excited by our vision. Yeah, no, I remember watching you talk about getting women, especially children, involved in education. That was one of the big things you were advocating, is getting folks excited so they actually want to choose a technology career.
Exactly.
Okay, so I'm gonna switch topics on you. Something a little bit lighter. So Jim really likes your vision. So he says awesome vision, and he's wondering what your favorite British invasion band is. And you can't say the Beatles.
I'm not sure if I actually listen to any British music. I listen to loads of American stuff.
That's ironic, but I think kind of by the subtext, invasion band, you guys wouldn't consider it an invasion if it was coming from you. But the opposite's true. If you had US bands you were listening to, that would be an invasion of U.S. songs. So, like, give us an example of one of your favorite U.S. Artists.
So I'm going to be really cliched and sound like a 14-year-old boy, but the last couple of days I've been listening to Linkin Park stuff, which I just rediscovered on my laptop. So I've been listening to Linkin Park, but I've also I'm actually for a British band, probably not Pendulum, The Prodigy. They're from around the corner from where I went to school.
Nice.
And then the Australian band, gig, Pendulum. I love those guys, and I'm also being exposed to an awful lot of European pop music.
Okay. Present company accepted.
Yes, exactly. It's very cheerful, and it annoys me in the UK when I hear all this Europop. But actually, when it's sunny, and which of course it never is in London, then it's quite appropriate. It feels fun.
Okay, very good. All right, thanks a lot for your time, Trisha, and I look forward to seeing you at JavaOne.
Yeah, I'll see you in a few weeks.
Okay, so the recording is